This week we have a short week with Veterans Day, so it's a little bit chopped up, but these are the words. This is the reading. We didn't do questions, but we did a worksheet. We'll go over the answers to the worksheet tomorrow. I'll post that in a flipped lesson tomorrow. But today, we are going to look over this. So, probability, we'll talk about last. And these are the words that you went over in your reading. So let's go over each of these one by one. Some of them are very similar to what we learned last week, just a little bit more scientific. So moving ahead, here are our words. So the first word, genotype. Who can tell me what is genotype? Okay, so correct. The genotype is the organism's genetic makeup. Now, this is going to be very helpful because as we start doing our Punnett squares more and more, in our Punnett squares, you would say, what is the possible genotypes? So the genotype is what genes or what alleles does it have. But that's how you remember genotype is what genes does it have. And so when we start talking about probability, I might ask, what is the probability of having a particular genotype? Okay, so genotype. So for example, different genotypes for our pea plants and height. The genotype could be big T, big T, little t, or little t, little t. Those are the three different genotypes for height in Mendel's pea plants. Okay, so then what does phenotype mean? So the phenotype, it's got the PH here, phenotype, physical. Phenotype, physical. That's how you remember. So that, what does it look like? You can't see what alleles something has, but you can see what traits it has. So the physical appearance for pea plants would be either tall or short. That's the phenotype. It is big T, little t. So for the phenotype of tall, it could have two different genotypes, right? Okay, then we talked about this last week. These two words, heterozygous and homozygous, are just different, more scientific words for something we learned last week. So heterozygous, homozygous. Who can help us out here? Okay, so heterozygous, hetero means different. Like when we talked about a heterotroph or an autotroph makes its own food. Heterotroph needs a different food source. Heterozygous has two different alleles for a trait. And last week we called this hybrid. But as we mentioned last week, hybrid is not a very scientific word, and hybrid could mean just like a cross between two different animals, right? Two different types of dogs would make a hybrid or a mutt, right? A hybrid, you cross a tall plant and a short plant and you get a hybrid plant. But hybrid is not a very scientific word, so we came up with heterozygous. So then the other word we're going to look at is homozygous. Okay, so homozygous, homo means the same, and so zygous is referring to genes. Same alleles for a trait. What last week we called purebred, so that would be big T, oops, or little t, little t. And again, as some of you noticed last week, one of the reasons we want to use a word besides purebred is if you do that cross of the two hybrid pea plants, they're both big T, little t, you could get a purebred offspring for the tall trait. Right, so that's why we're going to call it homozygous and heterozygous, because otherwise it sounds like, you know, you mixed two mixed dogs and ended up with a purebred German Shepherd. That wouldn't happen, right? Because purebred means something different than this. Finally, our last word for today is codominance. Actually, then we'll do probability. Codominance. What is a codominant trait? Yes. So one is not dominant over the other. You're either going to get a mix of, you'll get a mix of the traits. Some of the examples they do, you could cross, one of the examples I believe in the textbook, there's a black chicken and a white chicken, and you end up with a black and white chicken. Or you can have the red flowers and the white flowers, and you get the pink flowers. So you get those in between traits. It's co-dominant. They are both dominant. Pretty straightforward, right? Okay, then our last word, and we came across this last week, even though it wasn't one of our words, but we talked a lot about probability. So the probability, a Punnett square will give you the probability of a trait appearing. It will not give you a guarantee. In the same way that if you flip a coin 10 times, you will probably, on average, get 5 heads and 5 tails, because there's only 2 choices. But certainly, it's not guaranteed to get 5 and 5, and you might even flip a coin and get 10 heads in a row. It's not probable, but it is possible. The same thing will happen with genetics. The really nice thing about a Punnett square is because you have 2 parents and each parent has 2 alleles, you get this, there's 4 possibilities of an outcome. So for right now, we'll just go back to Mendel's P's one more time. Tomorrow we'll talk about some of our other traits, our other possibilities. But in this familiar cross, what is the probability of seeing that recessive short plant? What is the probability? What's the probability? What's the chance of getting the recessive trait? So the probability would be 1 in 4, or you could say it's a 25% chance. That's the probability. Does that guarantee you that if you cross those, you will get 1 4? No. Could you get half of your plants short plants? You could. Not as probable, but it is possible. And this is why it's so important that Mendel, over many years and thousands of plants, saw these patterns, bigger patterns, repeatable patterns, not exact numbers. All right, tomorrow we will go over the answers to the worksheet and do some more Punnett squares. Right now, we're going to